Hello, everyone. I'm Alison Steinberg, and welcome to In Focus. The indoctrination of America's youth by the establishment continues. By now, we're all well aware that classrooms have been turned into political battlefields. And radical liberals are leading the dirty offensive as they know the dire consequences a population truly capable of free thought finally caught on to their little game. Progressives understand you must teach the youth how to think by telling them what to think. They prefer their lemmings to be mindless, spineless, and feckless, the type who embrace tyranny and give in to the crazy-making cognitive dissonance of believing the government, who continues to violate their freedoms, is also their friend. But cult leaders at the top of this multi-level marketing scheme know the best way to protect themselves is to create allies in the coming generation. This nefarious campaign doesn't chase public opinion, but shapes public opinion and what is considered socially acceptable and unacceptable altogether. And it's an incredibly effective strategy, as the human brain is a lot like computer hardware that can install and uninstall software or operating systems. And they know this. The indoctrination won't stop until we say no, until we work to rid the mind virus that has infected so many into believing intelligence equates to blindly following orders given by those with perceived authority. Joining us now, CEO of Liberty Sentinel Media and author of the new book, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death, Alex Newman. Alex, thanks so much for being with us. It's great to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me, Alison.
Thank you. Well, we know the radical indoctrination of our children is happening at school. Alex, you've written extensively about this, and now there are reports that children are being bribed with taxpayer money. Can you tell us more about this?
So in the state of California, there are multiple school districts now that have just been caught giving $1,500 per child through taxpayer money here through a radical fringe left-wing revolutionary group called Californians for Justice. They're literally paying these children to go out and be social justice warriors. And a quick look at their Instagram page will reveal just how radical this group is. They're essentially calling for cleaning out the Jews from Israel. They're calling for radical wealth redistribution schemes. They're demanding the surgical mutilation of children under the guise of gender-affirming care. They're basically turning them into communist revolutionaries and paying them with our tax money to do it. So, of course, this is just the latest example of this. But unfortunately, Alison, it's the same thing we saw in Nazi Germany. It's the same thing we saw under Chairman Mao in China. It's the same thing we saw in the Soviet Union under Lenin and Stalin. Same thing we saw in Cuba under Fidel Castro, where schools, government schools, are deliberately weaponizing children against their families, against their churches, against their countries, and really turning them into revolutionaries. It's incredibly dangerous.
Incredibly dangerous indeed, and should alarm not only every parent, but every citizen in America. There are so many disturbing things at play here, and I'm wondering which part really stands out to you the most. Is it the use of taxpayer money to facilitate this? Is it the fact that the leftists are hijacking public schools to advance their own agenda? I mean, which is worse?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's all one and the same problem, right? A lot of people look at all these issues and they see separate scandals. Really, when you boil it all down, this is one giant issue. This is an attempt to, as Barack Obama famously put it, fundamentally transform the United States of America. So all these seemingly unrelated issues, the tsunami coming across the southern border, the indoctrination of our children using taxpayer resources, the use of so-called education to not just brainwash, but also to dumb down, to sexualize children. All of these things are moving us ultimately toward the end objective, which is a totalitarian society, the end of national sovereignty. Of course, Christianity and the Bible are the primary targets, and they see all these other things as a means to that end. This is really diabolical. These are the forces of evil. And parents, if you don't protect your children, I can guarantee you that nobody is going to protect them for you. The bureaucrats aren't going to protect them. The politicians are not going to protect them. The teachers are not going to protect them. It's on you and only you.
Well said, Alex. I don't know how anyone could possibly think the government could be here to help them at this point, so hopefully parents are taking appropriate action. But if not, I mean, what should private citizens do about this? I mean, it's clearly about indoctrinating people and using public money to push a dangerous political agenda, all leading down the same dangerous road. And I'm shocked this is really even legal, but I guess nothing really surprises me anymore. These evil people will stop at nothing to push their agenda. So what do people do about this? How do we respond to this?
Well, I think it begins with the individual. It begins with the family. I would urge all parents to immediately remove their children from government brainwash camps. Whether you live in California, Florida, Oklahoma, South Carolina, it really doesn't matter. Yeah, California is the nuttiest, but all across the country. In fact, this is a global problem. As I show in Indoctrinating Our Children to Death, the UNESCO, the UN's educational agency, is now deliberately and systematically working to standardize education around the world. So ultimately, it all is part of the same thing. No matter where you live, parents, pull your children out. After that, we still have a lot of work to do, right? If you can get involved in the school board, try to stop this stuff, try to protect taxpayers, try to protect the children who are still trapped in the burning building that is the public school system. All of those things I think are very, very useful. But ultimately, we have to go back and ask ourselves some really fundamental questions like, who should be in charge of the education of children? Who ultimately is responsible for this? Do we want the government involved in educating children? Frankly, I think that was a really bad idea. This is a relatively novel experiment. It's really only been going on for about 100 years systematically in the United States. We also need to be asking who's ultimately in charge of these decisions, right? Are the parents or the families going to be in charge for the upbringing, the development, the education, the discipleship of the children? Or is that a responsibility we're going to hand over to a government that slaughters unborn babies, a government that lies to us on a regular basis, a government that is deliberately fomenting the destruction of our country? For me, it's an easy answer, but I encourage everybody out there to think about this and pray about this. This is one of the most important questions we're going to be asking ourselves as individuals and as a society. And what we do on these couple of issues are going to determine the fate of civilization in the years, decades, and even centuries ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to get active now because time is a ticking and I don't know how much time we actually have left. So yes, parents need to get active, get involved, pray about it certainly, and hopefully get this straightened out because it's not just California, Alex, as you mentioned. This has been going on for some time and it's expanding rapidly. I mean, we've also got reports about gay camp for queer and trans identifying kids over in Massachusetts. Apparently, the camp received $180,000 in government grants, which, of course, means taxpayer money once again. I mean, this is becoming a rather common occurrence. I'm seeing a lot of this type of activity happening. But what do you think, Alex? Is this happening everywhere, all states? Is it just the blue states? Is this a common occurrence now?
Unfortunately, this is everywhere, Alison. It's even in Florida. You know, our governor, God bless him, he has tried to take some action to rein this stuff in. But this is happening all over the country. Yeah, Massachusetts, California, Illinois are probably worse than the Republican states. But ultimately, this is ubiquitous. This is happening all across the country. And, you know, on the broader issue here, why is the government funding LGBT camps? Why is the government funding camps in the first place? Right? We need to get back to a proper understanding of the role of government. The government is not to fund LGBT camps to brainwash and groom children. The government is not even to educate children. The purpose of government, according to the Bible, is to punish evil and protect the good. Now, we don't get to define those things. God has already defined evil, murder, theft, slavery, right? That's why the Declaration of Independence says God gave you the right to life, God gave you the right to liberty, to property, etc. So these are basic biblical principles, and if we hope to restore and preserve civilization for future generations, we're really going to have to get back to asking these questions. No, the state of Massachusetts or the federal government should not be funding LGBT camps. They also shouldn't be doing 80 to 90% of what they're doing. They should be punishing criminals, murderers, rapists, etc. And really that is ultimately the business of government. The other stuff really should be up to parents, families, communities, and of course, the family.
Great points, Alex. Beautifully said. And again, you know, the time is ticking. It's not just kids that this abuse of power is happening to. It's adult citizens too. And, you know, we are being policed for even speaking nowadays. So speak while you still can. Over in Canada, there's a new bill introduced, the Online Harms Act. Alex, can you explain this more to us? It seems like it's becoming a police state over in Canada. Can we expect something like this here in America as well?
Yeah, Canada really is becoming a police state under the leadership of Justin Trudeau. It is truly frightening to see what's happening north of the border. This new bill that you just referred to, this could put you in prison for life for hate speech. You could be arrested and detained. You could be put under house arrest, even for possibly maybe thinking about doing online hate speech. I mean, some of this stuff is almost too much to believe, and yet I've looked at this stuff over the last few days. They can literally keep you under house arrest if an anonymous person comes and accuses you of potentially thinking about doing hate speech. You don't even have to do the crime to be punished. Now, if you do the crime, if you do say, for example, homosexuality is defined in the Bible by God as sinful, if you do say God created male and female and there are no other options, and castrating a little boy is not going to make him into anything other than a little boy without genitals, if you do say any of those things, you could be in prison from 5 years to life under these measures that are being proposed in Canada. This stuff sounds crazy. They've already done it in big parts of Europe. And ladies and gentlemen, it will come to the United States of America if we're not very careful, if we don't actively resist, and of course, if we don't actively protect our children from being brainwashed into supporting this sort of cancerous totalitarian policy.
Exactly. It is just terrifying to say the least. And I think if we've actually already gotten a taste of that here in America with the ongoing censorship that we've seen time and time again, specifically for me with the COVID stuff. I mean, I had my accounts banned and deleted off the face of the earth. You can't say anything that opposes the government issued narrative. So yeah, we've already gotten a taste of what that's like. And I can't expect it's going to get much better, especially under the current circumstances. So yeah, get ready, guys, because I think it's undoubtedly coming to America. But Alex, unfortunately, the madness doesn't stop there, because up in Canada, again, police officers are now encouraging citizens to leave their keys out front to make it easier, not harder, easier, for criminals to steal. Apparently, this is the government's response to locals who are worried about being robbed now. What do you make of this? Is this just full-blown insanity that we're seeing?
It really is, Alison. In fact, you had the police chief publicly come out and say, hey, we're going to encourage you to leave your key fobs outside. That way the criminals won't break in and hurt you. What else should you leave outside? Should you leave your children outside? Should you leave your life savings outside? Should you put your safe outside? But this is totally bonkers. So on the one hand, they're going to use law enforcement resources to track down people who expressed their religious convictions or their opinion on social media so they can put them in jail for 5 years to life. On the other, we're going to encourage people to leave their keys outside so that criminals can steal their cars without having to bother them in their homes. This is happening in the United States. It's happening in Brazil right now. It's happening all across the Western world, and it is deliberate and strategic. They're emptying the real criminals, the rapists, the thieves, the murderers, out of the prisons, and instead they're wanting to put conservatives and Christians and people who resist the New World Order. All of this is by design. All of this has been thought through very carefully. They want citizens begging for a police state to keep them safe from the crime and the terror that has been unleashed by the very people who are building the police state. We've got to call this out. We've got to oppose it.
It's just despicable. I think it's safe to say the inmates are truly running the asylum. Just amazing. Alex Newman, we're all out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining us to weigh in. I really appreciate it.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.